Welcome to The Perspective with Mike Sherbino and Julie Stautland, where we give you a daily dose of God's love for you right where you are and exactly as you are, because God's got your back. What is the state of marriage these days? Well, the news isn't good from Stats Can, where they report marriage rates have declined while living common law and divorce have become increasingly common, and the average length of a marriage in Canada, 14 years. Back in the day, love and marriage was said to go hand in hand, but the times are changing, and Christian marriages are no exception to divorce rates. So today on the program, we're talking with former NHL superstar Ryan Walter and his incredible wife Jennifer about building and sustaining a marriage through teamwork. In part one, we'll discuss what irks married men and women about the other, how to solve differences, and why marriage is just that, a team game. Perhaps the most important thing we can say about holy matrimony is that that sacred bond is not always easy, but it is always worth remembering what brought the union together in the first place, and it is always worth protecting.
Hey, we're glad you're with us today on The Perspective as we talk about all things dealing with marriage. Someone said that marriages are made in heaven, but it's not true. Marriages are made here on earth, and they come in little kits, and we have to put them together. And helping me today, again, is Julie. Glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Are you the marriage expert today?
I don't think I'll ever call myself a marriage expert, but I have been married a long time, and I'm working on it like everybody else.
I think sometimes we hit a rough spot in marriage. We want Dr. Ruth or Dr. Phil or Dr. Laura. I think sometimes we just need Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss, I like that.
I like it.
Well, you know, I have a few quotes I have to share, and this one is from Will Ferrell.
These are dumb quotes, so we're just going to say it right up front.
Dumb quotes.
I don't like them, but I'm letting you do them.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Before you marry a person, you should first make them use a computer with slow internet to see who they really are. That was by Will Ferrell. I thought that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And I like this from Benjamin Franklin. He said, keep your eyes wide open before marriage and half shut afterwards. You know.
Okay.
And one last one, because, you know, I'm a woman. So this is from Kristen Bell, an actress. She said, I'd like to publicly thank my husband, Dax, for changing half the diapers in our house. I hope he changes all of mine one day.
Okay.
Talk about serving and loving.
This is totally unscripted, folks, and my apologies as we go through this journey, but a lot of times marriage is unscripted as well. And so here today to help us are leadership experts, Jennifer and Ryan Walter, and they're going to talk about marriage. I would love if Ryan and I could just go away and talk a little bit about hockey. I want to know why he never called me up to play, you know, as a wingman for him, but I got to forgive him and move on. Hey, we're going to be right back in our conversation. Stay with us here on The Perspective. Hey, we're glad you're back with us on The Perspective. Today we have Ryan and Jen Walters with us today, and they're coming back again to talk about some of the things that we need to avoid, you know, that are going to sink that relationship. And I'm looking at some notes here, and Jennifer was saying, put your phone down. Oh, okay. Julie, can you put your phone down too, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Jennifer, help us out.
Sorry.
What are the red flags at the beginning of relationships?
Not even on the table.
Yeah, it's so easy to lay it down and then just touch it every once in a while and see who's texting us, who loves us. But
Its presence there is a distraction to the brain. So the science has studied that, and distractions interfere with our connection for sure.
So distractions is a big thing. What else are you thinking?
That's hard, you know, that comes between couples. The one thing we talked about was security, and in our survey from a few years back, that was an issue for husbands and wives. And just whatever we can do to promote security in our relationship so that our spouse feels loved and secure and able to be open is really super important. And that's going to differ. It's going to vary for different people. And when we went through our really difficult years that I still blame on menopause, I felt very insecure for the first time in our married life. I did not feel insecure when Ryan had 100 girls asking him for his autograph after hockey games, when he went on the road for big trips. It was a different season in my life. But then I hit that time when, and I was super insecure. We had to work out what things could help me feel more secure. And Ryan was, really actually adamant. He was the president of the Abbotsford Heat hockey team at the time, AHL team. And he said to me, if you need me, phone me anytime. I'll walk out of a board meeting if I have to, because you're my priority. And that just, I didn't do that to him when he was in a board meeting, but that made me feel super secure.
I'm going to jump in too, Mike. As the Gottman organization, we like a lot. They've done lots of great research on marriage. And they actually say that 69% of the stuff that we have to work through as married couples never gets resolved. So you talk about things, people say, well, we got this and we got that.
Irreconcilable differences.
Right? Totally. So the point is, we want to stay best friends, even when we're not perfectly resolving every part of our life.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking together, first of all, Jennifer, thanks for your transparency and talking about your insecurity. But I know guys are insecure. And Ryan, why do you think it is we just clam up and we try to fake it till we make it and we blow it normally, but we don't want to admit our insecurities? Heck, we don't even know how to talk about them, it seems.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Mike. I don't know, it's a guy thing, maybe. Maybe it's the way that the Lord made us. We're all so different, and we're so different. And we really, we love that. I mean, teams are built of different players. You can't have all defensemen, right? You can't have all goalies. So, I think you can really celebrate that. I mean, the goal of the marriage is to get enough said that, we're in a place where we can share insecurities. And I think Jenny's helped me too. We went to a marriage conference. So there you go. We not only do them, but we go to them. Right. And for the first time, I don't cry. I'm just a guy that doesn't cry. And for the first time, I had tears in my eyes. And you know what it was about? It was about Jen and I talking about our finances in the future, right? Like I had insecurities in that area that I never really even knew I had. So I think that, we can help each other. I mean, I think you have to do it at the right time and in the right place, but we can help each other voice those.
And it's interesting that happened in a marriage conference setting for you, Ryan, because there's a lot of science about getting away for 48 hours. So it's not really just what we read, and everything we do is important. But when we can remove ourselves to a new setting, like a marriage conference, and spend 48 hours just with us, and what helps it even more if it's in nature, if it's a setting that involves nature, those things allow our creativity to just blossom, and it can be such a healing time and an exciting time to it's really important. A lot of married couples that we've heard talk, many of them spend a weekend every year doing what they call a business plan for their year. But it's that getting away together and just being together is really super important.
So when you're saying these things, the takeaway is that couples need to get away together and talk together. I want to bring Julie into the conversation in a moment, but here's a question for you, and I struggle with it. As a pastor and as a communicator, why do you think Christian marriages break up at the same rate as those who say they're not followers of Jesus? Maybe you can both chime in on that one.
We have strong feelings about that. What would you say, Ryan?
Well, right off the bat, Mike, I think that we need to put on the table that, if there's this unbelievably perfect, amazing creator, which we know that God is, our Heavenly Father, then you also know, because of this world, that there's an incredible evil force. And right off the bat, the evil one does not want Christian marriages to survive. That's number one, right? And I think there's a lot of pressure there because, think about what we talked about earlier, that marriage is the picture of Jesus and the church, right? And so if the evil one can get into a marriage and destroy a marriage, that really can help ruin the testimony of that couple. So I think there's lots of pressure from that side. What else would you say, Jen?
Well, and the compounded on that is just the entertainment and media world that we live in, and it's not favorable to marriage. It just isn't. Every show for the dramatic thing is going to have something attacking marriage, an affair, whatever. We're bombarded with anti-marriage. Sort of. And so that compounded with the attack of Satan on marriage, because it is a picture of Christ in the church, and because people know us by our love, those two things are huge. And for many too, it's not how it's kind of a generational thing. If we didn't grow up with our parents being married, or in a strong, happy marriage, or a strong, happy Christian marriage, we didn't learn from the beginning. We didn't have the role models that past generations had. So it's not hopeless, because the Bible tells us nothing's impossible with God, and we really believe. We think we just want to be marriage encouragers, and we really believe that there is always hope out there.
Well, I love what you've been sharing. We just have run out of time for the second period, but we're going to be back in the third period in just a moment as Julie's going to bring some questions.
Back with us are Jennifer and Ryan Walter, marriage and leadership experts. I realize we're talking about marriage. A successful, loving marriage simply cannot happen without Jesus at the center, and I know that personally as the foundation. But we're kidding ourselves if we don't also look at the breakup of marriage and the destruction of divorce. So what are your thoughts on this? I know for me and my husband, we've always said divorce is not something that we can even say. That's just out of the question. It's never on the table. So what are your thoughts on this?
What would you say, Jen?
Well, I don't think you're wrong. I think we want to focus always on healing, God healing our marriage, making it better. That being said, we've had many couples that are a blended family, remarried couples. God can do anything with anything. So would you say, Ryan?
Yeah. I maybe too, Julie, point us to Matthew 20, when we look at servant leadership in the context and the construct of marriage. So Jesus didn't say be an authority. Jesus didn't say, move people on. He said serve. And so I think if we can get back to basics and we can, sort of hold Christ in front of our marriage and say, okay, take a deep breath here. It's not what I'm getting out of my marriage at this point. Sometimes you have to pause and say, what energy am I bringing into my marriage? And hopefully that has a healing piece.
Absolutely. I think that's wonderful. And obviously, I totally believe that God can do anything. And it's so wonderful that there are so many marriages that are mended and yet blended marriages. And the fact that, sometimes we walk into traps with our words, and that's where I'm coming from. When if we come with the words of, oh, I'm just flippantly saying something and I wish I could take it back, that the lightness of that and the importance of our words in marriage. So going on for that, I want to say, what does divorce do to children then? When we talk about, we're talking with our mate and words in front of children, and then we end up in divorce, how does that affect them?
I'm going to jump in on this one. We don't have experience in that area. We have many friends that have that experience. But I think there's a principle, whether it's, the kiddos or the next person in people's lives, is we talk a lot about emotional permission. And what we found is that if we can give each other emotional permission, sort of go from head to heart, right? Sort of give that sense of, hey, listen, it's okay to talk about these things, and make it explicit. I think sometimes leadership is taking the implicit, the things that are under the rug, and making them explicit, holding them up and communicating them, so that whether it's a kiddo going through that situation or, somebody else, we have clarity around what the boundaries are, and it's emotional.
Right, right. What are some tips for people who may be going through difficult times, like for marriages that don't have God at its core?
Well, that's more of a struggle, of course, because of the power of God and because He invented marriage. But still, the same principles hold true. The big one is to get help. To not try to. I think many couples that didn't try to get help in divorce would regret that later, because we're grandparents now. So we have 5 children and 5 grandchildren.
Oh, wow!
And if pushing through that time, that difficult time, and then having the opportunity to grandparent together is something not to be taken lightly. And so to get help, to find good Christian counseling, and there's tons of it out there, is a great idea.
I'll give you a quick snap too. Regain your friendship.
Good one.
Right? Become best friends again. Why did you get married? You started with friendship, and go back to that.
That's great. I have to bring Mike back on the ice.
Well, that was a pretty good line, Julie, for somebody who doesn't skate. And let's talk for a moment. You talk about being teammates, and marriage really is a team event. You got to work together. Why don't you give us 2 of your best suggestions for our viewers today before we wrap up our conversation?
I'll jump in. In 1986, our Montreal Canadian team that won the Cup in May was really struggling in February. And if you think about the things that we put in place, it's probably not unlike marriage, right? First of all, we had a big meeting. We had to get together. We had to get it on the table. Why were we upset at each other? And then we had to focus on the right things. And I think that's a powerful piece. Jenny has got lots of things with me. I make a lot of mistakes that she can focus on, but she chooses not to focus on those. And I think that's a key component is, what do we see our future? What do we want to be in the future as we move towards Christ?
Oh, that is awesome.
What would you say, Jen? What would be your best tip to leave?
Just to add on to that is finding a time, carving out a time that's just for the 2 of you. And through when Ryan was playing for the Canadians, we had 4 of our 5 children then. And the only time we could find that could be just us before the kids woke up or when he wasn't playing hockey was early in the morning. And so we bought an automatic coffee maker and we made our coffee every night and set the timer. We had to put it in our bedroom so the kids wouldn't hear us tiptoeing by their rooms. And we made that time for just each other and God, just our Bibles, just our whatever had to be said, just checking in. And that was every day. And we still do that every day. We have coffee in bed every morning and carve out a time.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for being so open with us today. It's been wonderful to have you both on the show, Jennifer and Ryan. Thank you guys for giving us your time and contributing to our 2-part marriage special. If you'd like to find out more about Jennifer and Ryan's marriage and leadership programs, go to ryanwalter.com. Up next, Mike digs deep into the Word.
Have you ever seen one of those signs that says disaster area, enter at your own risk? It probably was a sign that should have been on my bedroom when I was a teenager, but maybe it is something that you can identify with. What's the disaster area that you're afraid to go into? Could it be that you've had a part in creating it? As we're pondering the whole subject of marriage, as we talk about divorce, let's also think about how do we move forward in a healthy way? Whether you're in a blended marriage, whether you're coming out of a painful relationship, or whether your marriage, like Ryan and Jen has talked about their own, has gone through a dry spell and saying, how do I breathe life into it? One of the most critical things in your relationship is learning how to talk and how to talk to each other. How do you talk to the person that you claim to love? Well, one of the first things is that we need to do is speak up. You know, the person who said that silence is golden was misinformed. Marriage counselors estimate that at least half of the couples that they see, one of the key problems is a silent husband. And often when a spouse says, what is wrong, we reply with our nothing. I've been guilty. To say nothing when there is something wrong is really lying. And it's to provide false comfort. And when we hold back by not communicating with our spouse, and now I'm speaking specifically to the guys, what you do is, rather than protect the situation, you just inflame it. They're wondering, they know that something is wrong. Many times my wife has said to me, I know something is bothering you. So why don't we talk about it? We need to talk. I want to encourage you today to speak up. You know, what Paul wrote in Ephesians 4, we'll come to it in a moment. He said, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building other people up. Your words can help the relationship to grow, to go the distance. And here's something else. It's dating back a long time ago, but do you remember when people used to collect stamps? I can vaguely remember my mother had stamps, and she'd collect the stamps, and then you get a discount on some food or product that you wanted to buy. Many times in a marriage, we save emotional trading stamps. You know, and this comes out oftentimes out of the silent husband who's not communicating. We save those things up, and then all of a sudden they spurt out all over, and so much damage comes out. As we think of a person, maybe, and it's not always with our spouse, it can be someone else who did something wrong to us, and all of a sudden all this bad language comes out, and all these painful memories. If you're carrying emotional trading stamps in your marriage, you are going to be the culprit for hindering your marriage from moving ahead. Even if what was done to you was wrong, as you hold on to that, that bitterness will cause you to be infected. But what do we do when we're talking about a painful thing? I've often told couples, you need to prepare the setting for a disagreement. Don't have the blow up in front of the kids. You need to find a private place. And more often than not, you would not have a blow up if you simply talked about it. I've been married a long time now, and my wife has finally learned how to get my attention. I got to confess to that. And just recently, I volunteered her for something. And she called me on the phone. She didn't embarrass me in front of the people, but she said, Reedy, I would have appreciated if you had asked me first. And I said to her, Terry, I am so sorry. I slipped on that one. I thought it would be a good idea, and I figured it all out in my head, but I hadn't checked in with her. I hadn't honored her in that situation. But what a tragedy, and how embarrassing it would have been if she had called me out in front of everyone else. If you're doing that, you are adding fire to a marriage that's going up in smoke. And here's the other thing, attack the problem and not each other. It's so easy in the middle of a disagreement to say, you always do this. And when you use those words, you destroy the scaffolding, the outward rigging to restore the relationship. You do so much damage. Just give the facts. Say, when you said this, this is what hurt me. Not you always or you never. Those words can be so detrimental. Watch how and what you speak. Don't let any unwholesome word, the Bible says, proceed out of your mouth, but what is helpful for building the other person up. Today, take time to go and find your spouse, your significant other, and tell them why you love them, why you appreciate them, why you think they're so special to you.
You know, Mike, it's so funny how God ties everything together. And this morning, my daughter sent me something, a picture and a quote, and I told her, I said, you didn't even know that we were going to be speaking about marriage this morning. But she sent me this picture, and it said, marry a man who says, let me discuss it with my wife first. Not because he is weak, but because he respects and values your opinion. Just like your story you shared about Terry.
Well, I wish she had sent me that text 2 days ago. Then I could have saved the situation. But that's what marriage is about. You know, if we got to learn from our mistakes. We have to move on. And I confess sometimes I have done that more than once over the last 40 years. But I'm trying to be cognizant of the things that especially allow my wife to feel that she's not valued or appreciated. We have to learn those languages. We have to learn to talk that way.
Yes, absolutely.
And I want to say to you today that there's hope for your situation. I don't know what you're going through. You might feel like packing it in. You might saying, you know what, it's all really nice what you've been saying, what Ryan and Jen have talked about, but you don't know my story. I want you to know today that we have a Heavenly Father who knows your story. He cares for you, and He wants to remind you that He is more than enough to bring you through. And whether you're going into a messy situation, or maybe you're coming out of it, or maybe you're starting to rebuild, can I invite you right now to write to us at The Perspective? And I want to encourage you. I'll write back to you. We'll keep in touch with you to encourage you in this journey called marriage. And best of all, we'll show you how to invite Jesus to be in the middle. Ask Him today to be your Savior.
It's all about making a difference, doing what you can with what you have. Who would think about taking old bed sheets or cotton and polyester products, things from thrift stores, to turn them into a beautiful gift? The quilters at North End Church do exactly that. For over 20 years, 7 to 9 women have gathered weekly, even through the summer months, to create these beautiful gifts. Who are they given to? Well, the MCC office takes them, and then they're sent to a place in Kitchener. These gifts of love are sent all over the world by the Mennonite Central Committee, helping people in need, providing comfort. Maybe it's to someone who lost everything and no longer has anything to provide warmth. Earlier this year, 30 quilts were sent to an Indigenous community near Parry Sound, just to let them know how much they are loved. And they need to hear that from us because they experience so much pain. But these women come and give of their time and energy. They pray over the quilts as they make them, thinking of the various places they will go and the lives that will be touched. They enjoy being part of this group. They enjoy the fellowship. And even though no one hardly even knows they exist, their difference is being felt throughout the world. And we are thankful for them. We tip our hat to those unsung heroes who are making a difference on behalf of us all.